Now it's my delight to introduce to you Cole Atkinson. Cole grew up, and let me just change this real quick so you can see his face, which you'll see very soon as well. But Cole grew up in a small farming town in eastern Washington and relocated to Portland, Oregon in late 2012 to be part of Portland Fellowship's Taking Back Ground program. Through this discipleship program, Cole discovered God's power to change lives, and in the process found himself the desire to spend the rest of his life telling others about this same power. He is enrolled and will graduate in December from Western Seminary with a Master of Arts in Biblical and Theological Studies. Well, that's awesome. He hopes to bring a gospel-centered counseling and pastoral care to the church after graduation. Cole, welcome. We look forward to hearing your testimony. So you can take it away. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. It's really a delight to be here. Thanks every one of you for being here. And it is my pleasure to tell you and talk to you about how Jesus brought me from the power of darkness and into the kingdom of light, into the kingdom of his son, which is what we hear in Colossians. And so let me talk about it with you. Let me tell you a little bit about me and mostly importantly, what God has done in and through and for me. So for all intents and purposes, I had a very ordinary upbringing. I had two Christian parents, an older sister and a younger brother. We weren't rich and we weren't too poor. We were just right. I grew up going to church on Sundays. I did youth group, went to a lot of awesome retreats, and did just a lot of other fun things. Sure, I fought with my brother a lot and I didn't really connect with my dad, but I had a mom and a sister who really doted on me and cared for me well. By any account, I thought I was totally normal, just like everyone else. That is until middle school, when I started to notice that I was experiencing life a little differently than my friends. When puberty hit, it became pretty apparent that I did not want the same thing as my peers. They were interested in women, but I wasn't. I was having these feelings of attractions to other guys. And by the time I realized what was going on with my same-sex attraction, I was devastated. I remember thinking and pleading, how can I live with these thoughts and feelings? Why do I have these thoughts and these feelings? I can't tell my parents. It'll be such a disappointment to them. And I can't tell the church because then they'll know that I'm wrong as a person. Do I need to tell God? Can he even see me behind these big invisible words, this big invisible word gay that I felt was just stamped on my chest, that sat between me and him and put this infinite distance between us? I remember feeling like my whole future was gone in that moment, that I was doomed to a lifetime of hiding, a lifetime of struggle, and a lifetime of fear. Fear of people finding out, fear of people knowing what I was experiencing, know what I was thinking. I became increasingly depressed. In high school, I spent a year and a half, what felt like a year and a half, just lying in bed, trying to will myself into non-existence. It was kind of like I had just hit rock bottom of life and just kind of wanted to live there. I didn't think that there was anything for me in the future. And after a while, after a lot of heartache and some counseling, which I didn't even talk about my same-sex attraction in, but some counseling sessions, and by the grace of God, I was able to kind of lift myself out of this depression, and with this newfound desire that I was just going to sweep everything under the rug. I was going to pretend that I didn't struggle, that it didn't exist, and I was going to move on with my life, whatever that looked like. And I was just never going to talk about it again, never going to touch it. But for anybody who has this struggle knows that you can't do that well, and you can't do that for long. It doesn't go away, and it doesn't something that you can just put away, put aside. And so in college, it got increasingly worse, to the point where I remember spending days of back and forth. I would be overwhelmed with uh, God's mercy at times, feeling like I'd connected with him and just pleading with him, Lord, take this away from me. I don't want this. What do I do? And then the next day being totally in the throes of what would it be if I lived a gay lifestyle? What if I just abandoned everything and went towards this feeling, this new world that I've never been a part of? And I remember it got so bad, this back and forth. And I thought, something has got to change. Something's got to go. And Lord, these desires are not changing. So you're the one who has to go. I remember I kind of call it my breakup conversation with God. But I had resolved that I was going to try and not be a Christian. I was going to push God away entirely, not let him be a part of my life, and I was just going to embrace these feelings, these attractions, and try and live a new life in light of them. And those were the worst I should say, months of my life. I remember thinking, walking around just feeling so incredibly empty, that I was this soul with nothing holding it up. Once God was gone, I was just kind of patchworking myself together with duct tape and rotten wood and all of these things, and all the most minor inconveniences in my life, I would just collapse into depression and sadness and sorrow, and it was tough. But two things happened that changed me and changed the trajectory, I would say, of my life forever. One of those things is, miraculously, through some random circumstances, my brother came to faith in a fairly radical way. While I was in the midst of walking away from Christ, he had found Jesus in such a powerful way and was overcome with the love of Christ. And he shared that with me on the phone. And most of my life, I had tried to kind of pour into my brother, whatever I had, whatever little faith I had growing up. I wanted to try and bring my brother into that as well. And I'd spent years trying to do this. And now it was going in the opposite direction. And I just remember thinking, Lord, I really, really want to do this with my brother. I really want to walk alongside him. And so, and I cry every time I tell this story. I remember coming before God. I remember on my knees and prostrating myself in prayer and saying, I'm so sorry, God. I don't even know if you'll have me back. I'm sorry of what I did to you. I'm sorry of how long I've gone. And I just remember him going, I don't care. I'm just glad you're home. And from that moment on, I knew that if God could love me through everything that I had did to him, by pushing him away, by running away, by denying him, if he could love me through all of that and take me back, he could love me through anything, including this same-sex attraction that I was dealing with. And so I had been brought back into the fold. And the second thing was, I had not told anybody in my life up until this point that I was struggling with same-sex attraction. No one knew. At least I thought no one knew. Maybe some people did. Maybe it was obvious to others, but I had never confessed it. I'd never brought anybody into the struggle with me. And I decided to tell my parents. And another act of overwhelming love and graciousness, I had confessed to my parents one night when I was home from college, and I was sitting on the floor, and they just descended on me and were hugging me and crying with me. And they just kept saying, we're so sorry. We're so sorry that you have to deal with this. It's not fair. We're so sorry, just over and over again, and how much they loved me. And I thought, oh, okay. If these people can love me through this, then maybe others can too. and maybe I can do this. Maybe I can get through whatever this is, this same-sex attraction. But I didn't know. I didn't know what to do. And so I knew I needed help. And my parents had come across this ministry called Portland Fellowship. And they had pitched it to me a while back, and I still had a year of college to do. So I said, okay, let me finish college, and then let me go figure out what this Portland Fellowship is. So I did. Finished college. I went to work at a youth camp in Eastern Oregon for a couple of months. And my last day of youth camp, I drove to Portland, Oregon, on the night of their first program with nowhere to stay and just a duffel bag of clothes, just trusting that God would make something happen. And he did. It was amazing. But I remember my first night of walking into Portland Fellowship and just how scared I was, because I knew that walking through the doors there meant that everybody would know what I'm struggling with, that this was no longer something I could keep secret, that other people were going to see. And for anybody that's ever been through a program like this or engaged in it, you might know what I'm talking about, that overwhelming fear. But that was exactly what I needed. I needed to know that I wasn't alone. I needed to know that other people were not just experiencing the same thing, but were wanting to find some sort of solution, that we're wanting to walk with God through this. And lo and behold, here was this wonderful group that was there for me. And so it was through this process, Portland Fellowship's taking background, that God began to show me so many things, began to show me that I was more than just my struggle, that I was way more than just the feelings that I had that I was dealing with. It gave me the perspective to realize how much more there was to life in the kingdom of God than just the struggle, that there was things that I could engage in, and he could fill me with joy in all areas of my life. I remember thinking at one point, I was at this point living out of some lady's house that I didn't know while she was in New Zealand, taking care of her cats. I had no money, no friends, and a job that I hated. But I remember being on the bus with this crappy cup of coffee and a granola bar, just thinking, if anything else, just the God of the universe knows me and knows my name, and that felt like enough. I just was overwhelmed with this sense that as long as Jesus knew who I was going to be okay. That he could take care of me through all of this. He was showing me all these wonderful things. And so through this program, I think what God did the most importantly was that he showed me change was possible, that I didn't have to live in fear. And I use this example, and bear with me, it seems weird, but it's the best way I know how to describe the emotions and the feelings that I had in kind of pre-Portland Fellowship and after. And so I'm very scared of open water, deep water, dark, crushing water. And the Mariana Trench is the deepest place on Earth. It's this huge hole in the ground in the bottom of the ocean of just crushing black. And it felt like I had lived my whole life standing on the edge of this trench, looking into the crushing blackness, and was just ruled by the fear that was same-sex attraction ruling my life, that I always had to be aware of it, and it was going to control my actions and how I interacted and what I thought and what I did. But after Portland Fellowship, this same-sex attraction moved from this massive, scary trench to a Rubik's Cube. It was not this big, scary thing. It was, yes, it's this frustrating puzzle, and I haven't solved all of it yet. I'm getting there, but I control it. And I can put it away. And it is not this big, scary thing. It is just a small, difficult puzzle to deal with. And that difference is amazing. And so how did this happen? I want to highlight, I think, a couple of things that were absolutely key during my journey with Portland Fellowship, and I think are key for anybody that is struggling with this, with same-sex attraction in particular. But first and foremost, started with the people at Portland Fellowship. This handful of dedicated men and women who were committed to helping me. They allowed me to be vulnerable for the first time. in my life. They didn't step back or flinch when I was excavating my soul and pouring out all the gunk that was in there that had been building up for years. When I felt unlovable, they continued to love me. And when I felt hopeless, they encouraged me. They gave me the space and time to root through the messiness of my life while I tried to figure out what God was trying to do in and with me. They instilled boundaries to protect me and to give me a sense of safety. And most importantly, they allowed me and pushed me towards the Spirit and allowed me to mess up, but continually said, get back up. God's got this. We can do this together. Next, secondly, I had people in my church created space for me to be vulnerable. They knew about the ministry and what I was doing and moved towards me to ask me about it. They wanted to know me and to walk with me. This was particularly important because this expounded the boundaries of my community, of safe community. What Portland Fellowship was and felt like an anomaly was now getting bigger and bigger and becoming more of an outside of the ministry reality into my everyday life of church community. These people who I once felt were far off because they couldn't understand me, they didn't struggle with what I struggled with. They couldn't even identify it. Were seeking to love me and connect with me, not despite my struggle, but because of it. They moved towards me in a way that was intentional and kind, and wanted to know me. And third, and most importantly, God in his incredible Spirit was always working for my benefit. When I was honest with him in my anger and in my frustration and sorrow and in my joy, he was kind to me. He spoke softly but firmly. When I asked him with an earnest and humble heart, he led me into the truth about who I was. He allowed me to see the way my past struggle and his goodness and kindness had always been with me and loving me through this. It was a really important memory during my time at Portland Fellowship that I was driving past the Jansen Beach Red Lion Hotel. Not that any of you know that, but I remember just looking over at it as I was passing and thinking, that feels oddly familiar. And the Lord instantly restored this memory to me that as a kid, I had gone to a youth conference here. I'd never been to Portland in my life before I'd moved there, or so I'd thought. But all of a sudden, I remember doing a youth conference at this hotel years and years and years ago. And something that I'd completely forgotten was that he had saved me there at that hotel. And this memory of his indwelling Spirit, that I remember his Spirit come rushing on me, and he became so alive to me that day years ago in middle school. I had forgotten for years. And in that moment, he told me, I did that then before you were going through all of your same-sex attraction struggles so that I could seal you for my own and that you would never leave me despite all of this. I had made a covenant with you then that I was following throughout the whole time I was struggling. And what a kindness of God to get in front of all of my struggle and all of my pain and to really mark me as his own and to really give me that surety of his Spirit, even when I didn't remember that or realize that. And it was just another grace of the Lord to show me that he had always been working in my life, even when I didn't feel it and even when I was pushing him away. So I want to leave you with one last Bible verse that was extremely important to me that I think will hopefully be hopeful. But I was having one of these moments during Portland Fellowship where I was asking the why question. Why, God? Why me? Why did you let this happen? Why do I have this thing in my life? And I came across John 9:1-3. And I'll read it. It's the disciples and Jesus are walking along, and as he went along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus said to them, neither this man nor his parents sinned, but this happened so that the works of God may be displayed in him. And from that day on, I have seen this struggle not as a why question, but as a chance to show the power and glory of God in my life, for him to change, for him to be bigger than our struggles, and to show that he can love us through anything, no matter what we're struggling with. So I leave that as an encouragement to you. And it looks like I'm coming to the end of my time. I don't know if questions are a thing, but I'm happy to take them. But yeah, Ann, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. And Cole, what a profound testimony. Thank you so much for sharing it with us. I remember the day of walking into care for myself many, many years ago, and I was scared to death. And yet look at what the Lord's done as a result of your walking through the fear. And he has just shown his profound love in and through you to our audience as well. People can ask you questions over in the chat, and feel free to respond to them later.
Okay.
But we're going to move along to our keynote speaker. So thank you so much, Cole. We sure appreciate you.
My pleasure.